Hello and welcome to this Easy Spreadsheets for Life video tutorial. In this video, I will explain everything you need to know to get started with your new spreadsheet. This tutorial applies to our annual budget series, which includes the Easy Annual Budget, the Annual Budget Plus, and the Premium Annual Budget Max. The Easy Annual Budget has 19 tabs, which include instructions, setup, dashboard, bill calendar, an example template, 12 monthly tabs, the debt payoff calculator, and the savings tracker. The Annual Budget Plus includes everything in the Easy Annual Budget and also the Goal Budget tab and the Budget Forecast. The Annual Budget Max includes everything in the Plus and also tabs for net worth and holiday budget. So in this video, I will go through the Annual Budget Max because it includes all tabs. So no matter which spreadsheet you purchased, you will learn about every tab in your spreadsheet. First, we'll start with the Instructions tab. At the top, there are links for contacting us. A link to our Frequently Asked Questions page on our site, this video tutorial, and also a link to the Tips and Tricks page on our site, which can help you get the most out of your spreadsheet. Below the buttons is an important Read First section. We highly recommend making a copy of your spreadsheet before you enter any data. This will give you an unused original version that you can copy from if you ever happen to delete or break any formulas. If you don't make a copy, or perhaps you can't find the copy you made, you can always go back to your Etsy account and download the file again. As we scroll down, you'll find a basic tutorial of how to get started with your budget spreadsheet, as well as the additional tabs that are included. If you're familiar with Google Sheets and you feel comfortable jumping right in, then this page is probably all you'll need to get up and running. Next is the Setup tab. This is where you'll enter information that will automatically apply to all 12 monthly tabs. This would be your preferred currency, the budget year, the starting month, and the starting balance. So I'll just add these now to show you an example. I'm going to use the dollar. The budget year is 2024. I'm going to start in June because you can start in any month you like. And I'll say the starting balance is $250. Then down here, you'll enter all of the information for each of your main categories. The main categories include income, bills, expenses, debt, giving, and savings. And you'll see here at the top how many entries you can make in each one. All subcategories need at least a name entered in the Setup tab. If your budget stays pretty consistent, you should also enter your projected budgeted amounts for each one here, because this number will auto-populate in each of the monthly tabs, so you don't have to enter them every month. However, if you want to manually change the budget amounts in each monthly tab, you can do that, and I'll show you how a little later. Also, the income, bills, debt, and giving categories have an additional column for a payday or a due date. Again, you can enter that here, which will auto-populate all the monthly tabs, or you can enter them manually each month. Any category with a due date will show up on the bill calendar. If you're brand new to Google Sheets, it's helpful to know that your entries are automatically saved to your Google Drive, so there's no Save button to click before moving on. I will add some examples to show you how the Setup tab works. Okay, now that we have some data, we'll look at the monthly tabs to see how the setup entries show up. And because I started with the month of June, I will go to the June tab. All right, so here is the starting balance that was entered in the Setup tab. And down here, we see all of the projected budgeted amounts that were entered. And you'll also see the subcategories and any dates that were added in the Setup tab. You'll also notice that there are colored cells and then there are white cells. The colored cells have formulas in them and should not be edited. The white cells are where you will make your entries. Don't worry about accidentally deleting or editing a formula cell because the spreadsheets are protected. And if you type into a colored cell, you will see a warning message that will either allow you to back out or move forward with editing a cell. Throughout the month, you would simply enter actual amounts for each of your subcategories as they occur in the white cells. And you would do this for all of the major category tables except for expenses. You'll see that the expenses table doesn't have any white cells, which means you're not going to enter anything in this table. It's all automated. Instead, you would enter your expenses in that month's expense log. The expense table will automatically calculate the totals for each of your subcategories in the expense table. So I'm going to make some entries, and you can see how the spreadsheet works and how the graphs and progress bars are updated. Okay, so I've filled in some amounts in the actual columns for some of my categories. And now we can see how the plus and minus columns have also updated. And I did that for all tables except expenses. So let me explain how the expenses table is a little different. The reason I didn't enter anything into the actual column of the expenses table is because these monthly expenses, such as groceries, fuel, entertainment, personal care, etc., what are sometimes called variable expenses, these will typically have several transactions in each subcategory throughout the month. For example, you'll fill up your gas tank a few times and you'll go to the grocery store a few times. So this means you'll need to enter each transaction as they occur so you can keep track of the total amount you're spending in each subcategory throughout the month. And for that reason, there is a dedicated expense log for these transactions. The subcategories you named in the expenses table will show up in a drop-down list here in the expense log. So you're just going to enter the date of the transaction, the amount spent, and then choose the appropriate subcategory. And then you also have the option to enter a description. So I'll add a few examples and you can see how it works. So I had mentioned previously that you do have the option to change your budgeted amounts in the monthly tabs, even though these are colored cells with formulas. The formula is there for consistency and automation, but if your budgeted amounts with certain subcategories tend to fluctuate, then you can change these amounts manually when necessary. You will see the warning message that I had mentioned earlier for a protected cell. But all you have to do is click OK to bypass the protection. So let me just show you an example. And I can also change any date in the monthly tabs, and this new date will show up in the Smart Bill calendar, such as your due dates or pay dates. If you want to add or change any subcategory names, then you'll need to go back to the Setup tab and make those edits there. If you want to remove the protection from your spreadsheet, just check out our tips and tricks page for those instructions. Okay, so let's go over the sections in the spreadsheet. At the top, you will see 3 progress bars. Each reflect how much of each of these categories that you've used so far this month. So just looking at the income for June, we can see that this amount right here has already been received. Just below the progress bar, you'll see what percentage you've reached of your budgeted amount, how much remains, and whether you're under target, on target, or over target. These graphs are just a quick way to see where you're at in the overall budget. Below that, there are 4 graphs. The first is a daily expense tracker. which graphs how much you spend in the expenses category only. The expense category is for logging expenses that repeat throughout the month and are variable, such as groceries, fuel, entertainment, etc. This is a category where most people overspend because it isn't fixed and it's easy to go over budget. So this graph is just a good visual to see if your expenses are staying within your budget. Next is a pie chart that breaks down bills, expenses, debt, giving, and savings by percentage of the total amount of all 5 categories. So if we added up all of the actual amounts for these 5 categories, we would find that bills would be 42.5% of that total. And you can click on the graph itself and then hover over each element to see more information. Next, we have a graph which compares budgeted amounts with actual amounts for the month. And last on this row is a toggle graph, which shows you a breakdown of how much you have left to use or spend and how much you have left to budget. So you just click this down arrow to toggle between the two. And you'll notice the number in the middle is the same amount you'll see in the cash flow summary over here. So here we see we have used 96.6% of the total income we've received so far for the month. And there is 3.4% that is left, which represents this amount in the middle. Okay, let's scroll down to the monthly cash flow summary. This is a quick snapshot to help you see where you're at in the monthly budget. The only cell that is not auto-populated in this table is the actual rollover amount. By default, the budgeted rollover amount here will always equal the actual rollover amount. However, you do have the option to change the actual amount if you need to make an adjustment at the beginning of the month. So let me show you how that works. The actual balance here is what will auto-populate in the next month's starting balance on the first of that month. Today is actually July 12th. So if I click over to the July tab, I can see that the starting balance here equals the actual balance from June. If you get to July and realize that your bank account's balance on July 1st doesn't equal this rollover balance, you can enter the actual rollover balance here in the cash flow summary table to make that adjustment. And again, this actual balance won't show up as the rollover balance until the first of the next month. So if we click over to August, we'll see that there is no rollover balance yet. Okay, let's go back to the June tab and look at each of the main category tables. You can see that once I entered actual amounts, the spreadsheet calculates how much I am over or under the budgeted amount. And as I explained previously, the expenses table automatically calculates the totals for all of the subcategories from the entries you made in the transaction log. Also, for bills, debt, and giving, you do have the option to check this box here on the left when it's been paid. When a box is checked, that transaction will show up with a line through it on the bill calendar as long as you've entered a due date. So I will check a few to see how they show up when we go over the bill calendar a little later. Okay, over here on the right is another pie chart which breaks down how your money was used for the month. And it's generated by the table below it, which also includes actual totals. Below that table is the table that generates the daily expense graph up at the top. So if you want to see more details than the graph provides, you can just review this table here. And towards the bottom, there are 3 areas you can use for a to-do list, any money goals, and any notes you want to add. And that is basically it for the monthly tabs. They all work the same. The last thing I want to mention is what to do with the monthly tabs that you don't use. Perhaps you start your budget in May of this year. You can hide all of the monthly tabs before May without compromising any functions and make your space easier to navigate. All you have to do is click on the down arrow of a tab and choose Hide Sheet. The tab and all of its data is still there, it's just hidden. All you have to do to show the tab again is go up to the top menu, choose View, Hidden Sheets, and then choose the one you want to unhide. Now, for the sake of this video, I have already added entries to July and August, so you can get a good idea of what the dashboard can do when you have more data. But before we go there, I just want to quickly show you the Example tab. This is just a non-working example of what your spreadsheet will look like once you've entered some data. Also, you can learn more about each section by hovering your cursor over any section that has this little black triangle up in the right corner. Once you're comfortable working with your spreadsheet, you can always hide this tab. All right, let's move on to the dashboard. The annual dashboard is completely automated and it requires no input. It pulls all the data from the other tabs and automatically updates every field and graph, so you always see the most updated version of your budget. Up here at the top, you will see 3 totals, which are the annual accumulated totals for income, spending, and savings. And just keep in mind that spending includes expenses, bills, debt, and giving. Just below that, you'll see the annual cash flow summary and 3 graphs. In the summary table, these amounts here in the budget column reflect the annual budgeted total for each of the main categories. So when you add up your projected income for all 12 months, this would be the total here, and the same for each of these categories. The current column is the total of all the actual amounts you've entered so far in each monthly tab. So these amounts will continue to increase as you keep adding entries to each monthly tab. And this last column just tells you the difference between what's budgeted and what's actual. Next, you will see a bar graph, which compares the budgeted and current amounts for each category in the cash flow summary table. The budgeted amounts are gray and the current is yellow. The second graph compares your actual income with your actual spending, which again includes bills, debt, expenses, and giving. As you make entries for each month, this graph will change to reflect the new data. The last graph in this row is a bar chart that breaks down your top 10 spending categories so far for the year. And again, you can click on any graph and hover your cursor over any element to see more information. All right, next you will see the 6 main category tables with totals, a list of your top 30 spending subcategories, which includes the total amount for the year so far and the percentage of total spending. Under those tables, there are 6 graphs which show you the percentage you've already entered so far for each main category's budgeted amount. So, for example, we will look at bills, and we see that 41.2% of the total annual budgeted amount has been used, and there is 58.8% left. And last on this tab are tables that break down subcategories and amounts by month, with the running total here at the end and the monthly average of all entries so far. So I know that is a lot of data on this tab, but it's all automated and it's a great way to see the big picture of your annual budget, how well you're staying on track, and where you may need to cut spending. All right, let's move on to the bill calendar. This tab only requires one entry, which is the year. Typically, you'll want to enter the same year you entered in the Setup tab, but occasionally you may want to look ahead or even in the past to see when certain bills were due. You just click on the blue field above Smart Bill Calendar and you type in the year that you want to review. The calendar will automatically update. Of course, for any due date to show up on the calendar, you would need to have entered one either in the Setup tab or in that month's tab. If you've entered a bill without a due date, it won't show up in the bill calendar. And keep in mind that bill includes debt and giving because those categories can also have due dates. All paydays are highlighted in green, and the bills are in red. And you'll see for the current budget year that any bill that's already been checkmarked as paid will have a line through it, like here. Each date can hold up to 10 entries. If you see any date with a ref error, such as right here, this means that Google Sheets is saying there are too many entries for the space provided. If you have more than 10 entries for any date, you just need to add more rows and then you can see all of the entries. And for example, here on the 5th, we have this ref error. So I would need to add more rows to this date in order to see all the bills. So all you have to do is highlight any row for that date over here on the left. Then I left click and choose Add Row. And now I can see that there are actually 11 due dates for the 5th. If I still see a ref error after adding a row, that just means I have to keep adding rows until I have enough to show all entries with the same due date. Okay, let's move on to the debt payoff calendar. We'll go all the way over here. This tab is completely independent of all the other tabs. It's totally optional, and the rest of the spreadsheet will function properly even if you decide not to use it. However, it is a powerful tool you can use to help you get out of debt faster. The debt payoff calculator is just that, a tool that will calculate a payoff plan for you based on the debt snowball, avalanche, or custom method. The debt snowball method will prioritize the lowest debt balances first, while the avalanche focuses on paying off balances with the highest interest first. The custom method will prioritize your debt payoff by the order in which you enter your debt account information. Whichever one you choose, the calculator will give you a debt payoff plan, an amortization schedule for up to 30 years, and your debt-free date if you make every payment. Here in the top left corner, you will enter the date you want to start your payoff plan. Then any initial one-time payment you may have, just enter 0 if you don't have one. Any additional ongoing monthly payment you'll apply to the minimum payments, and then you'll choose which strategy you prefer. In the debt overview table, you'll enter the information for each debt balance. This includes the debt name, the current balance, the minimum monthly payment, and the annual interest rate. And as you enter this information, the rest of the spreadsheet will calculate the order and amount of payments and the debt payoff date here in the last column. So I will add some examples and you can see how the spreadsheet works. All right, now that we have some data in our overview table, we can see to the right that there are two graphs. The first is a bar graph representing all of your debt balances, and the second shows you how your total balance is paid off over time. Down here, you will find a debt balance summary table, which tells you the total balance, the total interest, and average rate across all balances for each month of your payoff schedule. There are enough rows for 360 months of payments, enough to calculate a 30-year mortgage. Next to the debt balance summary table, there are tables for up to 20 debt balances. At the top, you will see the debt name and payoff date. Below that, you'll find your monthly payment, the interest, and the remaining balance. The only other information you would add to this spreadsheet is any adjustments to your payments. And that's what this white column is for. So let's say you want to add an extra $50 to this debt balance for this month. So I will just click on the cell and enter 50. And then the rest of the payoff schedule will update automatically. If you decide to pay less than the scheduled amount, or if you skip a payment, you would enter that amount as a negative number. So if I had to skip this payment entirely, I would enter this payment amount as a negative payment here. Now, you can change and update all of these white fields in the top left and in the overview table whenever you want. You can enter different values, choose a different strategy to see which one suits your circumstances the best. All cells will update automatically, except for any entries in the adjustment columns. If you make changes to the payoff schedule after you've entered any adjustments, then you will need to delete any adjustments you've entered because adjustments are not included in the updating calculations. Also, you have the option to check off your payments by checking this box over here. And lastly, back up at the top, you will see totals for your current debt, total monthly payment, and then again, your debt freedom date. All right, let's go to the savings tracker. Again, the savings tracker is not connected to or synced with any other tab in the annual budget spreadsheet. It's completely independent and optional, but still a great tool to help you achieve your saving goals. First, you're going to fill out this saving funds overview table with names for each saving fund, a goal date and a goal amount, and any starting balance that you may already have. If it's 0, then you would just enter 0. All of these colored columns over here will auto-populate and update automatically. So you wouldn't enter anything in these cells. Once the table is set up, all you have to do is enter your contributions down here in the savings transaction log. You will enter the date of the transaction, choose from the list of saving fund names that you had listed above, and then select whether it's a deposit or a withdrawal, because sometimes in a pinch, you may just need to pull out some money from savings, and you want to make sure your balance is updated appropriately. So just enter the amount, and again here, a deposit to your savings fund will be in a white cell and added to your savings balance. And any withdrawals will show up in red and be deducted from the balance. And then over here, you can add a note if you like. So I will make some entries and you can see how the savings tracker works. Okay, now that I have added some transactions, we can see that as you deposit and withdraw from your saving funds, your total deposits, total saved, the amount left, and the number of days left to reach your goal, and this percentage progress bar will all update automatically based on your log entries. Okay, let's go over to the Goal Budget tab. The purpose of the Goal Budget tab is to see what your budget would look like if you assigned certain percentages to 3 main categories of your budget, which are needs, wants, and debt and savings. The calculator will compute what your budget should look like with the percentages you choose and how your current budget compares. The common percentage breakdown is 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for debt and savings. However, you can change these percentages here in the Goal Budget Breakdown table. Just be sure that all percentages equal 100%. But for now, we will just stick with the default. For this tab, all you need to do is select the month you want to analyze. Be sure you're selecting a month that you already have budget data for. So, for example, the month is currently July, so I wouldn't choose August because the calculator would have no data to work with. So I will choose June. Again, any cell with a colored background has a formula and will automatically update for you. Okay, once you pick the month, you'll scroll down to the category tables, where you'll see many cells are already auto-populated. All you need to do is designate each subcategory as a need, a want, or as debt and savings. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Once all subcategories have been assigned, I can go back up here to these top tables and see how my actual spending in the month of June compares to this goal budget over here. So for example, my goal is to have my needs take up 50% of my income, but currently they take up almost 67%. So this data helps me know where I should reduce or increase my budget for that category. And these graphs are a helpful visual that breaks that down. Okay, let's look at the Forecast tab. The Forecast tab is included in the Annual Budget Plus and Annual Budget Max. The Budget Forecast Calculator will give you a 52-week forecast of your budgeted amounts, so what you plan to receive and spend over an entire year. The first entry you'll make is the date you want to start the forecast, and here I will enter July 1st. And here's a tip. If there is a date already entered in a cell, you can double-click the cell and Google Sheets will pop up a calendar, and you can choose a new date from the calendar as well. Then you'll need to enter a starting balance, and I'm going to enter $500. Once those two values are in place, I'll start picking the subcategories I want to forecast. To keep your forecast as flexible as possible, these are fields that you will choose manually instead of being auto-populated. So here in Income, you can select all income sources or just a select few, and the same with the other categories as well. Along with the subcategories, you'll enter a budgeted amount, a repeat value, and then the period of the repeat, which is a day, a month, or a year. Then the last entry you'll make is a base date, which the spreadsheet will use to base its calculations on. So I'm going to make some entries and then I'll explain how the forecast is generated. Okay, so I will explain how the forecast works. If we scroll up to the top, we'll see a header for the various columns up here. The category and budgeted amount are self-explanatory. The repeat value works together with the period in order to create a pattern of repetition. The repeat number indicates how many of the selected period will pass before the next repeat. For example, here I've selected a repeat of 28 and the period is a day. So my forecast will repeat this income source once every 28 days, which equals 4 weeks. The calculator will start from this base date you entered to make the calculations. Many bills are monthly, so you would choose a repeat value of 1 and a month period. And this means the bill will repeat once every month. If there was an expense that occurred daily, you would select a repeat of 1 and a day period. In other words, it would repeat every 1 day. Okay, once you've gotten all of your entries complete, you can scroll to the right to see what your forecast looks like. On any given day, you can check which income and expenses will apply for that day, as well as the beginning balance up here at the top, and then the ending balance for each day is here at the bottom, but it's also the same as the opening balance for the next day, so you can check either one. Having a column for all 365 days in a year makes this spreadsheet very long, as you can see. So I've made a way to hide entire months with just one click. All you have to do is go up here to the top, and above these column letters, you'll see a long line with a boxed minus sign. Just click the minus sign, and you'll hide the entire first month of your forecast, except for the first day. You'll find this boxed minus sign show up every 30 days on your forecast. So if your start date is the first of the month, you can easily hide all months so you only see data for the first of every month. And to expand the columns, you just have to click the plus sign again. Okay, let's move on to the Net Worth tab, which is included in the Annual Budget Max. The Net Worth Tracker allows you to enter your assets and liabilities to calculate several values, which you can find up here at the top of the spreadsheet. First, you'll enter a goal amount and a goal date up here in the top left corner. Then you'll scroll down to the Assets Overview table and make your entries for all assets. The asset overview table is divided into various sections to help you organize your assets efficiently. You'll list your assets in the appropriate category and then enter the current value or balance. And then each month, you'll track your assets by entering updated amounts in each of these monthly columns. Then the table will calculate a year-to-date growth and a growth percentage. So I will enter some data for this table. For liabilities, just scroll down to the Liabilities Overview table and enter the data in the same way. So now we have assets and liabilities listed along with their starting balance, and we can see that the net worth overview table has updated as well as these graphs. This graph to the right is an area graph, so it requires more than one set of data to populate. So I'll go back and enter some updates in January so you can see how that graph works. Now the January column in the overview table has updated as well as the area graph. Again, at the top, you'll see some important totals along with these three graphs that give you a visual representation of your net worth. This middle chart is actually a toggle graph. You just select this down arrow to toggle between your assets distribution and your liabilities. All right, so let's move on to the holiday budget tab, which is also included in the annual budget max. The holiday budget will help you create and maintain a budget so you don't overspend. At the top, simply enter the holiday you want to budget for. Then scroll down to the budget table, and here you'll enter various expense categories that you determine, as well as the budgeted amount that you want to set. So I'll make some entries now. Below the budget table, you'll find a gifts table where you can keep track of all gifts you buy, the names of the recipients, and the gift, and a budget for each gift. And then once you buy the gift, you can check this box and enter the actual amount that you spent. So I will just add a few entries. Once you buy the gift, you can check these boxes here on the left and then enter the actual amount that you spent. At the bottom, you'll see totals, which you can compare with the amounts in the budget table. Then to the right is the transaction log, where you can enter all transactions associated with this holiday budget. As you enter transactions, you'll see a running balance of your entire budget here on the right. So let me just add a few. As you update your holiday budget, these totals at the top will recalculate and give you the latest values. All right, and that wraps up this video tutorial. If you still have questions, you can go back to the Instructions tab and choose one of the links at the top. There are a few different ways that you can contact us for additional support, including the FAQ page, our tips and tricks page, as well as contacting us directly through our Etsy shop. Thank you again for choosing Easy Spreadsheets for Life, and I wish you all the best in your budgeting goals.